In this video, I'd like to talk about Malaysia versus the Philippines and just generally compare the lifestyle you can expect in both of these countries. So this video is really for people considering to move to one of these countries and digital nomads just thinking of temporarily settling in these countries. But we will talk about long-term visa and residency paths later in the video. So to get into the video, first off, let's compare the people a bit. I know I have quite a bit of Malaysian and Filipino followers on the channel, so let's just keep the people short. To me, Filipino people are quite a bit friendlier on average, and they're really a little bit more outgoing. This isn't to say Malaysian people aren't friendly. They are quite open. However, comparing the two countries, Filipino people are much more like happy and grateful someone's coming to their country, be it to temporarily reside on like a tourist visa and travel around, or even if it's like getting residency and staying there long term. Malaysian people, they don't really care as much. They don't really value having foreigners come in. They don't really, like, they have a bigger economy than just tourism, and I don't know, they just don't seem to really value it as much. But that isn't to say Malaysians aren't friendly and welcoming to foreigners, particularly if you enjoy Malaysia and you like it. They are like okay with you being there, but not like hostile towards foreigners or anything like this. But you should know about the people that Malaysians are, on average, in my experience at least, they are a little less outgoing and friendly. You won't have like, I don't know, social dynamics there. You're not going to be talking to strangers quite as much sort of behavior. Versus in the Philippines, really, you can pretty much strike up a conversation with just about anyone, and they're happy to talk, they're happy to just discuss things, whatever it is. So yeah, Filipinos are just a little bit more friendly, a little bit more outgoing, and to me, a little bit more caring towards you as a foreigner. But besides the people, let's talk about the food more, because I know the food affects like people's experience a lot. So the food in Malaysia, they have more like international options. So let's break it into two different parts. So let's say food like you eat out as well as food at home, because I know a lot of people like eating at home and cooking for themselves. So let's start food out. To me, Malaysia has much better like eating out options and like fast food. Well, not fast food, like I'm not talking about like Burger King or something like this or McDonald's. I'm not saying that. I mean like restaurants you can eat at, or like Uber Eats, Grab, food, stuff like this. So like where you can order food to wherever you're staying, as well as just generally restaurants to go to. Malaysia has much better in this regard, in my opinion. They just have, I don't know, it's more developed, I guess. So you have more access to goods in terms of ordering food at your house, as well as they just have more international food options. So if you want like Chinese food, there's tons of Chinese immigrants, as well as like there have been many generations, but Chinese people, and they have Chinese food, and it's really pretty good quality Chinese food. So that's one thing that's really good in Malaysia, especially Kuala Lumpur and Penang. In terms of other food, they have quite a bit of Indian food as well, especially in Kuala Lumpur, as well as like a lot of the northern part of Malaysia, it seems like, has quite a bit of Indian food, but really throughout the country there's quite a bit. As well as, of course, the local food, in terms of like local Malay food, is also quite good. It's not, like they have more variety, they use more seasoning, they use more spices, so it can be quite tasty. One complaint of mine is sometimes Malaysian food, when you eat out, particularly the Malaysian Indian food or the Malaysian food, it can be a little bit oily. But I'm someone who doesn't really like oil in their food, really likes to eat light, low fat. So if this isn't really you, it's not really a concern for you. But generally, you can eat pretty okay eating out in Malaysia. There is one issue with eating in Malaysia, eating out, and it also is true for the Philippines. And that's if you're ordering food from like a food delivery app, sometimes due to traffic and stuff, as well as just they don't have tons of people doing the job, you will have like struggle to get the order delivered. So it might take longer to actually be delivered to you than in other countries. So like Thailand, you order food, usually you get a driver within 10-20 minutes, and your food's delivered within 30-40 minutes at most. This isn't really the case in Malaysia or the Philippines. Sometimes it takes quite a long time to get a driver and actually get your food delivered. Sometimes like in Malaysia, it's taken over an hour and a half for me many times to just get a simple thing that's just from a few kilometers away. So it's something to be aware of. It affects both countries. Yeah, my advice would be to put tips in the platforms, as well as to use the like express delivery options, because it does truly make a difference. Once I saw that I put quite reasonably high tips, let's say, into the platforms rather than just moderate ones, then the deliveries went from often like an average, like in the Philippines or in Malaysia, of around 60 minutes, all the way down to like 30-40 minutes for the time to be delivered. So I would recommend using tips if you're going to be using food delivery platforms in these countries. But let's talk about the food delivery options and just eating out options in the Philippines. So to me, it's not quite as good as Malaysia because you don't have quite as much international food, but you do have like certain elements that are better. So example, if you like seafood or like eating fish, the Philippines just has much fresher, like more local fish, and they just have much better quality. And they do have lots of like grilled food. So if you want grilled meats or grilled fish, you can get that relatively easily in the Philippines, delivered to you or at pretty much any restaurant. So it is like quite convenient in this regard. If you're vegetarian or vegan, it is a little bit more troublesome in the Philippines. And this is one reason why I don't like the Filipino fast food or like food delivery and eating out as much. However, if you're in areas like BGC or the countryside, it isn't too difficult. Like there is usually some sort of vegetable option or vegetarian option. They do have, especially in BGC, quite a bit of like vegetarian vegan options as well. So if you're staying in Manila and BGC, you're gonna be fine. Same in Makati. So like overall, the situation is fine, but to me, I prefer the situation in terms of Malaysia in terms of eating out. They just have more variety. I prefer the cuisines. They offer a little bit more because local Filipino cuisine to me is mostly centered around grilled meats, and well, I don't really eat meat, so that's my complaint. If you like fresh fish and stuff, then you'll probably actually enjoy the Philippines more because they really know what they're doing in this regard. That's enough with eating out. Let's talk about eating at home now. So in the Philippines, it's kind of split up in two different ways. I'll talk about more later in the video. But really, it's in the countryside, you have really fresh fruit, vegetables, access to all sorts of fresh produce that's very good quality. In the cities, especially if you're staying in Makati or BGC, you're gonna really have some trouble in terms of getting fresh fruit and vegetables to cook at home with. They do have some frozen products, mostly imported from like the USA, that you can use, and they do have quite a bit of other like specialty products in these stores in BGC and Makati. But outside of those areas and like the smaller medium-sized cities in the Philippines but not countryside, it's better to go to a market. But markets aren't very convenient around Makati or BGC. That's why I'm specifically saying that, because I know a lot of people do like, if they're going to the Philippines, a lot of the time they do like staying in Makati or BGC. That's why I'm kind of mentioning them in specific. But really, in the Philippines, the grocery stores don't have very good produce, or they just don't. So it's better to go to markets for that. But they do have quite a bit of products you can buy, packaged products that are quite good quality, and you can cook with. I mean, to be clear, they do have pretty much all the produce you could want in these supermarkets, even in Makati and BGC and all the other cities. But it's just most of them are like imported products, it feels like. So like you're getting, I don't know, green vegetables aren't actually grown locally or something, like they are imported, or you have like asparagus or like some fruits there, like apples and stuff that aren't local. You don't really have a lot of the local fruits and vegetables, it feels like. So to me, eating it like at home in the Philippines is okay, but it's just, I don't know, something's kind of off with it if you're eating in these cities. But if you're eating in one of the like smaller cities or in the south of the country, in one of these cities, it's a little bit better. But really, the countryside is where the Philippines shines. Fresh fruit, vegetables, you got all kinds of products there, and really you can just cook yourself a good meal at home with like organic produce and stuff. In the cities, it can be a little hard to find organic produce that's grown locally unless you go to a market, which isn't always very convenient. So how about in Malaysia? So in Malaysia, eating at home, it's a kind of like the USA or like a Western country where you have to go to a big supermarket chain and you have to like, everything's like big supermarket. So a lot of the produce is also imported. I find it to be a little bit better quality. I feel like that's because a lot of the produce they import is from like India or Thailand, versus in the Philippines, they seem to import more from the USA. So I don't know, US produce is particularly garbage quality in my opinion. In India as well as Thailand, they have like sweeter fruit and I don't know, just better quality vegetables as well. So to me, I actually prefer the produce in Malaysia if it's in the cities. In the countryside, Philippines has better produce. In terms of packaged goods, once again, Malaysia has way more variety, especially in terms of international food. So they have like, you can find like specialty cereals. If you like packaged trash, like cookies and chips, you can find tons of that in Malaysia. Much more variety and like better quality. You can find tons of like packaged Chinese products. You want like dried noodles and stuff like this, you can find it. They got tons of cereals and grains. They have quite, like, you can get some organic stuff as well. And yeah, I don't know, just in the cities, let's just say the like grocery and shopping experience is better in Malaysia. you will have to go to a big supermarket though. So oftentimes that requires you to take a call, or when you're out and about and you're like at a mall or something like this. A lot of the time we have supermarkets downstairs, just like in Thailand. So like the overall the grocery situation in the city in Malaysia is a bit better. In the countryside, it's quite a bit worse in the Philippines, in my experience. Okay, that's enough about food. Let's talk about just generally, because I know the next thing that's important to a lot of people is the cost of living. So the cost of living between these two countries is, in the countryside, the Philippines is quite a bit cheaper, especially for the quality of life you're getting. In the cities, especially like the capital cities, again, like Kuala Lumpur versus Manila, to me, the quality of life and the price is actually quite similar. In terms of like the price you're paying for a good condo or a decent condo is going to be quite similar in both of these countries. To me, Malaysia is a little bit more expensive because, well, the condos look, and they have more condos to choose from, and they look in the photos, especially on like Airbnbs, they look quite good. When you actually go, most of the pictures are from a few years ago, and just the quality, the maintenance of the property just hasn't been maintained. So you go to the gym, it's broken down. You go to the pool, it's kind of dirty, a little bit broken. It's not really like the pictures all the time. So you know what, actually let's just talk about that real quick. Airbnb Quality. So, because I know a lot of people just use Airbnb for pretty much everything. The Airbnb Quality and the trustworthiness of the host in Malaysia, even the hosts with good reviews, in my experience, is really, really, really bad. So also in terms of booking platforms and hotels, but particularly the Airbnbs. So you go there a lot of the time, when you show up, they take a photo of your ID. Sometimes they want to even take your ID from you or your passport and keep it. A lot of the time they'll also ask you to transfer over, usually around 200 ringgit, Malaysian ringgit. So this is around, I don't know, like $50 or something like this as a security deposit, and getting it back can be kind of troublesome. Some of them are, I don't know, it boggles me why they do this, but some of them even demand you send it to them before you show up to the property as a reservation deposit, and you can't really do this unless you're like a local with a local bank account. So I don't know, the Malaysian Airbnb experience is not very convenient. It's not very easy. It's not very trustworthy. You show up, once again, like I said, and the property just doesn't look how it's supposed to most of the time. And I'm saying like most of the time is in 90% of the time, that was my experience. And I'm not staying at a property that's $10, $20 a night, something like this. No, I was staying at properties usually in the range of around $50 to $70 a night. So a reasonable budget for traveling in a Southeast Asia country, kind of medium budget properties. I stayed in a few higher end ones as well. And it just, most of them also had similar issues. So I don't know, at this point, whenever I go to Malaysia and visit, because I don't really like staying there long term, whenever I go and visit, I generally just stay in a hotel, like a Holiday Inn, because the quality for a price there is pretty okay. Especially like the better brands of the chains. Like Intercontinental, for example. The Intercontinental in Kuala Lumpur City Center is, I think it's like somewhere around $120 a night, $110 a night, and you have a gym, a pool that actually works, which is very rare for Malaysia. The location's pretty convenient. There's a few malls within a 10-minute walk. There's many good restaurants nearby. It's just overall very good experience. I haven't had issues there, but in terms of Airbnbs, lots of issues in my experience, as well as trying to rent long term. So if you're trying to rent long term, I heard tons of similar issues, as well as I experienced some similar issues. So just Malaysia, the rental experience, Airbnb, trustworthiness, all of it's just quite poor. In terms of the Philippines in this regard, it's quite a bit better. So in the Philippines, apartments can be kind of small in a lot of the big cities, such as Manila. However, they show that they're small. They're upfront about it. They don't lie about it. Anything you see in the photos of the Airbnb listings generally is pretty accurate in my experience, especially if it has good reviews, Superhost, any of that sort of stuff. In the Philippines, it actually means something. It actually reflects the property. So to me, using Airbnb in the Philippines was actually a very good experience, both in the city as well as the countryside. In the countryside, like you can rent a house for, I don't know, I think we rented for like $600, $800 a month, something around these lines. I forget exactly, but it was a really good house. Rented it for a couple weeks and yeah, enjoyed the countryside. That was one of the places we rented in the countryside. And it just, overall, the pictures look exactly the same or even better. Like the property looks better in person than it does in the pictures a lot of the time. And like the quality you're getting, the building, people maintain the property, the photos are up to date, it seems like. And it just, like I said, we had no bad experiences in terms of Airbnb in the Philippines. So as well as other sort of rental situations. So most of the rental situations I heard in the Philippines were like from retirees. I spoke to a lot of American retirees when I was in the Philippines, and all of their like rental situations were quite easy, honest. There weren't like scams. There weren't any like funny business going on. Versus in Malaysia, there were some. So just overall, the trustworthiness and the living situation, the housing situation in the Philippines is quite a bit better than in Malaysia, in my opinion. So to move back to what is the cost of living in both of these countries, like I said, the housing situation is kind of a bit similar in terms of price, but the quality you're getting for a price in the Philippines is quite a bit better, in my experience, particularly in the countryside, but also in the cities. In terms of the other cost of living, like fruits, vegetables, this sort of stuff, again, countryside Philippines, much, much better value for pretty much everything. In the cities of the Philippines, it's kind of a mixed bag. It's usually similar to prices in Malaysia, in my experience. Sometimes Malaysia has a bit cheaper fruit, but it really depends. In terms of packaged goods, really, the Philippines and Malaysia, it's really kind of similar. But again, Malaysia has many more products to choose from. So in terms of other cost of living, like transportation, just generally getting around, services, like you want to get a massage or something like this, the Philippines is quite a bit cheaper, maybe around 30-40% cheaper than these same services in Malaysia, in my experience. And the quality in the Philippines I actually prefer. Like, yeah, you got one other tip, if you're using like Uber or Grab there, try to not pick the cheapest option for the car. If you try to do this, you'll get a very miserable, terrible car in both of these countries. It's not like Thailand where you get a nice new car. They have all taxi companies or something like this that use these apps, and you get really bad cars if you pick the cheapest option. So pick the medium option at least. Just an extra tip. But in terms of that as well, let's talk about the transportation a bit. So both of these countries, to me, forget about the public transport. If you want to take a car, you're going to be okay. But if you want to take the public transport, Philippines has maybe a little bit better public transport, but it's very busy. It takes a long time. Usually it's better to just walk, in my experience. Just walk, or like put headphones in, walk, or just to take a car. If you want to go, like say you're staying in BGC, you want to go to Makati, or whatever it is, just take a car. It's much simpler, it's much faster, it's much easier. That's been my experience. Or take a motorbike if you feel safe with that. In terms of Malaysia, you don't really have a motorbike option, so you're going to be taking a car everywhere. And the bus system, the metro system, like it looks like Kuala Lumpur especially, it looks like it has good metro, it looks like it has good buses, all of this. But in practice, when you try to use them, you can't use buses unless you like register with your passport and your phone and all sorts of complicated stuff that isn't easy. It's not straightforward. No one really tells you how to do it. And even then, sometimes you can be denied for some reason. So the buses, really forget about them in Malaysia. You really can't even use them most of the time unless you're a local. And in terms of the public transport, in terms of metro, most of the time I try to use the metro in like Kuala Lumpur. I show up to the station, pay, you have to pay a certain way. You can't scan pay or anything like this. You can't tap pay. You must have cash, it seems like, or have a card that you already loaded with cash. And upon getting in, you usually have to wait 10-15 minutes until the next SkyTrain or metro arrives. So to me, it doesn't really make sense to use public transport in Malaysia. It's not very efficient. At least all the times I've used it. Comparing it to like Thailand or anywhere in China, usually expect a new train every 3 to 5 minutes at most. Waiting 15 minutes is just unacceptable. So to me, the public transport in terms of in these cities is just terrible. In both of these countries, you're going to have to use a private car, and there's quite a bit of traffic. Pretty much all times of the day in most of these cities, but especially during like work hours, rush hour. They do have rush hour in most of Malaysia and most of these cities, but it's very, very bad. In the Philippines, it's kind of just always traffic, unfortunately, so it's just something to keep in mind. So in Malaysia, especially Kuala Lumpur, if you're going into the city, it's better to do that kind of mid-afternoon instead of early in the morning. Same going out, you want to kind of wait until a little later in the day, 8 p.m. or something before going back, or do it before 5 p.m. or you get stuck in traffic. So it's just something to be aware. In terms of the city, like inner city transport in both of these countries, it's okay. The bus systems are kind of similar. They're a little chaotic, they're not super organized, but they're still quite reasonable and easy to use. They're quite reliable, they leave on time, all of that. They're relatively comfortable. Something to be aware of in the Philippines, they do play like advertisements kind of on the bus, so the bus journey is a little less good. So the driver will play advertisements or a TV show. sometimes music, but oftentimes there's just lots of advertisements. So I don't know what it is with that, if it's just the companies I used when I was in the Philippines and it was my mistake, but the bus experience in the Philippines is not the best, but it's not terrible. It's not as bad as some other countries. It's reasonable. In terms of the transport, like out of the country as well as throughout the country by plane, both of the airports to me, all the airports really, the Penang airport in Malaysia is pretty good, but the Kuala Lumpur airport to me is one of the worst airports I've ever used. It's not in the city, it's not very convenient, the staff are very rude, and just the overall experience is pretty bad. In Manila, the airport's not so good just because of how much traffic is around there and how busy it is, but otherwise the airport's quite okay. The people are like friendly, very reasonable people. And the other airports in the Philippines, very good. The other airports in Malaysia are just okay. Like Kota Kinabalu or something like this on the Borneo Peninsula. I might not be pronouncing the city right, but that city, the airport's quite good to me. But yeah, overall the air travel is okay in both of these countries, but the capital cities, the airports are just either too busy or they're too far from the city, or it just takes a long time to get there. In Manila, it can take longer to take a car to the airport than it takes to walk during rush hour. So just depending on when your flight is, it really heavily depends on how early you should go to the airport. Sometimes you can go to the airport in 15 minutes from like BGC or 10 minutes, something like this. Other times it might take you an hour and a half. So it's just something to be aware of. Like airport times, getting air transport to and from the airport can be not the best, and the airports can be quite busy, and in Malaysia's case, not the friendliest. So yeah, let's move on. The next thing to be aware of is just how much pollution, both in terms of noise and air pollution, both of these countries have. So Malaysia has a little bit less like air pollution. Their air is actually quite a bit cleaner than most of Southeast Asia. The Philippines, it appears much cleaner, but in like cities like Baguio as well as Manila, the air quality is really, really bad, even though the sensors don't really say it's bad, because it really depends on where you are, how close you are to the road, different things like this. So to me, the air quality in Manila is not so good. In Kuala Lumpur, it's moderate most of the time, pretty okay. You're not going to get sick from it. But in terms of noise pollution, both of these countries just have tons and tons of noise pollution. All of the cars are gasoline cars, and in Malaysia they drive quite fast. In the Philippines, they might not always drive fast, but their cars are particularly loud is what I mean. They have like jeepneys, the public buses in the Philippines, which are quite frankly the loudest combustion engine I've ever heard in my life. It's undescribable how loud some of them are when they are like flowing it, going on gas. I really can't describe it. It's really like a jet engine or an airplane is taking off next to you. Maybe even it feels louder than that because it's closer to you. So just the noise pollution in these countries are really bad. You can avoid it. So like in the countryside of the Philippines, it's not very loud. In the countryside of Malaysia, it kind of depends on how close you are to the road. In the Philippines, even if you're close to the road, it's not too bad in the countryside. But in the cities, pretty much everywhere, you're going to have noise pollution, you're going to have a bit of air pollution, and it's just kind of unavoidable. Even in places like BGC and like wealthier places, where they don't allow like jeepneys in the Philippines, where they regulate the traffic a bit in Malaysia, you still don't have, like it's still not quiet. In Malaysia or the Philippines, a lot of the time you're staying in a condo and you're on the 35th floor, 37th floor, whatever it might be, and it has big glass windows. You would think, hey, I'm not facing a highway, it's not like some expressway, I'm way higher, I shouldn't be able to hear traffic. But unfortunately you do. Even with your windows closed, you do. You just always hear the traffic. It is what it is. It's not like constant all every second you're hearing traffic, but you hear traffic quite a bit. Yeah, it's something that really does, like I notice it quite a bit compared to other countries. Okay, that's enough about like just generally in these countries, comparing them. Let's talk about specifically life in the cities. So life in the cities of these countries to me it's okay. To me, I kind of prefer life in the cities of Thailand more than life in the cities of either Malaysia or the Philippines. Malaysia, the cities kind of feel a little hollow, like they kind of, a lot of the time they lack the culture. I think a city kind of in central Malaysia, like Ipoh, has a bit more culture and a bit more personality, but most of these cities just feel like dead, soulless husk without much going on there. There's not a lot to do, it feels kind of manufactured. So I don't really like these cities in Malaysia too much, although they do have quite a bit of convenience, like I said, in terms of food in particular. In terms of the Philippines, these cities can be quite a bit hectic, like very, very busy. They have much higher population density, and yeah. But things are going on in the Philippines. You really feel that things are happening, things are moving forward, they're improving in some ways, but life is quite harsh because of the sheer amount of noise pollution you have. So to me, life in these cities in both of these countries really aren't the best, but if you're a city person, and you like, let's say, city activities. So personally, I'm not a big fan of a lot of city activities, going out, especially nightlife and stuff. But in Malaysia, it's much worse. Like, it's very clear about it when you go to both of these countries. Malaysia it's a more calm country. There's not too much going on. In terms of city life for a family, maybe Malaysia's a bit better actually. But in terms of city life for just most people would enjoy city life in the Philippines more. There's more to do. There's like rooftop bars you can go to that are just casual bars. You talk to people, you enjoy, you share a pizza on the 50th floor of some building or something like this, kind of like Bangkok. Good place to meet friends and like meet up. In terms of the other nightlife, quite frankly, I don't really go to nightlife, so I don't know too much, but I've heard Malaysia is like just, it's not really the place for that. In terms of Philippines, there is nightlife of terms of bars, drinking, all sorts of stuff. So if you enjoy that, you can go enjoy. But to me, if you like city life, in terms of Southeast Asia, Bangkok is simply just superior in almost all regards in terms of living in this city and what you get. In terms of countryside life, so let's talk about countryside life now. To me, the countryside in the Philippines is probably one of the best countryside lives you can have in Southeast Asia. To be clear, I'm talking about countryside life. You're staying a few hours away from Manila in the countryside, mountain, or like hills region around Manila. A few hours outside of Manila, either there or the islands, of course. To me, the quality of life there you get for a price is really exceptional. You have good air quality. It's not too loud. The people are really, truly some of the friendliest people in the world. Only Nepali people really compare, like the sheer friendliness they are, how helpful they are, just how kind they are. They're genuinely kind, caring people, which you really don't see that much in most countries anymore. But in the Philippines, it's just typical. Almost everyone is very kind, caring, and generous. So countryside life in the Philippines is really, really good. You got good food, fresh vegetables, fruits, everything's reasonably priced. And this is why most people who go to the Philippines and retire there and stuff choose the countryside. Versus in Malaysia, most people who move there choose big cities like Kuala Lumpur. But in terms of the countryside life in Malaysia, quite frankly, to me, it was exceptionally bad. Like, I had a couple bad Airbnb experiences doing that. So I don't have a ton of experience in Malaysia countryside. But in my experience, it's not as developed as Thailand. It's more car-centric than both the Philippines as well as Thailand. So in the countryside in the Philippines, you don't really need a car. You can kind of walk most places, and occasionally if you want to buy something big or a lot, you can get a small little taxi sort of thing for a few dollars. In Malaysia, it's not really like that. It can be hard to even get a taxi whatsoever. You really need a car. Everything is not walkable. It's just kind of a mess. I live in a few cities in kind of like central and northern Malaysia. There it's okay, as well as eastern Malaysia. But overall, you really do kind of need a car in the countryside of Malaysia. So to me, I'm not really a big fan of the countryside, and you don't get better fruits and vegetables in the countryside of Malaysia, I feel like, than you do in these cities. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really like the countryside of Malaysia too much. I much prefer the countryside in the Philippines. And to be clear why, the countryside in the Philippines, your lifestyle is very relaxed. You have access to most of the food products you would really care for and enjoy. The people are very friendly, and you have very good nature and beauty around you. You have the islands and beaches, you have just different things, or you have mountains and hills near you. Like you always have some nature near you that you can actually go to. In Malaysia, I found a lot of the countryside, it's all like private land. Some of it's palm oil plantations and stuff like this. Other it's just general farms. Other it's just unkept rainforest. But there's very little actual hiking paths and like beaches or nature to actually go to. So that's like really, and to me, the people aren't as friendly and all of that in the countryside. But that's just because of how friendly Filipino people are. It's not that they're unfriendly in Malaysia. So that's really why I prefer Filipino countryside life. Okay, so that's a good overview of pretty much everything you need to know about living in the Philippines or Malaysia and like how they compare against each other if you're going to visit or actually plan to get a visa and live there, like residency or anything. So let's talk about your tax situation a bit, because I don't know, people don't really talk about your tax situation. If you're going to be living in one of these countries, the tax situation does really matter. So both of these countries, Philippines is easier to get residency or stay long term. Malaysia, it's a bit harder. But both of these countries have a territorial tax system. So generally, if you make money abroad and your business is abroad and everything's just done with foreigners and you don't get paid into a Malaysian or a Filipino bank account, generally you will not have to actually pay taxes within the country unless you're doing business in the country. So this is one thing that's really advantageous, particularly as a foreigner. With that being said, there is more like enforcement and filing requirements in Malaysia. There can be ways where you're more exposed there versus in Malaysia. They don't care as much if you're a foreigner. You don't really have as many issues with this. So Philippines are a bit better in this regard. To be clear about this, so Philippines is one place that a lot of people don't really realize. It's one of the best places in Asia in terms of reducing your taxes because you can get residency quite easily there. It doesn't require much presence to actually maintain it, and you can effectively pay zero tax using the Philippine residency. So it's quite a good option in terms of reducing your taxes. Malaysia, it's a bit more expensive to get residency. So you know what, let's just talk about residency real quick. So the residency options in the Philippines, you can stay on a tourist visa and just keep extending it, but to me, you don't really get residency with this. It's kind of like you can always kind of get kicked out, so I don't really like it as much, but a lot of people do this. There is also a better option, which I've talked about on the channel before, and I actually started the process to do. However, I decided against it ultimately, which is the SIRV visa, the Special Investor Residency Visa of the Philippines. We also have a retirement visa, and both of these visas are relatively easy to get. You basically just invest, in terms of the investor visa, around $75,000 or so in the country, all in with bureaucracy fees and everything, and you get basically permanent residency. Really, it's temporary residency, but it's renewed every year indefinitely. So really, you can stay there as much as you want and, again, pay essentially no taxes whatsoever. So that's one really good option for the Philippines, and it's quite cheap, it's quite affordable, and anyone of any age can do it. So as you can see, I'm quite young. I was going through a process and I just decided against it because I recently got married, and I just decided, you know what, life in the Philippines in terms of long term, living there many years isn't really for me and my wife, but in terms of visiting short term, I really enjoy it. So I kind of decided against the residency process after going through it and helping a few other people go through it who were interested in it. So yeah, in terms of Malaysia, the residency process is much more difficult. You need a lot more paperwork. You're gonna need, I'd say, to actually get the residency easily, you're gonna need really high income or like $300,000. They're quite a bit pickier. They want you to be a bit older to actually get the residency. So while you can also do like 3-month border runs on tourist visas, and you can pretty much do that indefinitely. It's not residency, it's different. So in Malaysia, you really do have to you have to have quite a bit more money. You have to really show more ties to the country. And it's just much more complicated of a process. So if you're doing it for tax reasons or anything like that, Philippines is a much better option in terms of if you just like to live in Malaysia, it is possible to get residency there, but it's not the easiest. It's not any easier than getting residency in Thailand, in my opinion now. So to me, I prefer probably getting residency in Thailand instead. So yeah, that's really going to be all for the video. If you have any thoughts or questions about living in Malaysia or the Philippines or just generally Southeast Asia, or you want like any specific questions regarding your circumstance answered, feel free to leave those down below. But with that being said, bye bye.